We are live. This is a classic. You're going to know what that is. Today's going to be the day that they're going to throw it back to you. By now, you should have somehow realized what you know to do. And all the roads we had to walk are winding. And all the lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things that I like to say to you, but I don't know how. I love this bit. Because maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my wonderwall. And I'm not going to do any more because the show's about you, Kiran, not about the song. I really cut that really short because it's such a long before we get to the verse, and the verse is so iconic. So if you want to listen to that, I will be playing it on lunchtime on my Facebook channel. Kiran, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, all good. Thank you for choosing such an awesome song.
No problem at all.
That's the first time that I think I've played that on this show, and this is show 100. Can you believe that? Show number 100. Richard's saying you're looking a bit shell-shocked with that rendition. So, Kiran, welcome to the show. My very first question is, why did you choose that song?
So I do quite like a bit of live music, and if you can't find somewhere that does live music on a night out, your next best choice is a karaoke bar. And yes. It amazes me wherever you are in the world, you know, as soon as you hear those first couple of strings to Wonderwall, that somewhere within that bar there is at least one other Mancunian that's sat in there with you. So yeah, very, very much for that reason.
And like I said right at the start, as soon as you hear those two chords go, you know. I play that song in my band. I don't play it, the band play it, I just sing. And as soon as you do it, everybody sings along. It is such a cracking song to play. So thank you very much for choosing that. So, sir, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Kiran Mehta, investment manager at Mercia Ventures. Clues in the name, venture capital house. So a lot of people are probably asking, what does that mean? Essentially, we invest capital into very early stage businesses in return for buying a stake within that business. So it's typically technology and life sciences businesses because they're the easiest to scale. So that's what Mercia does. And then my role within that, I sit in our seed stage team. So typically investing usually between £500,000 and £3 million into businesses that are looking to grow and scale pretty quickly.
So hang on, for the less educated people like myself, are you like Dragon's Den?
A lot of people ask that. I think there's an app that's definitely true. So do we get to see a lot of pitches? Yes. Do we have a big stack of cash to the side of us that people walk off with? Not quite that directly. So yeah, there's definitely the front end of it. I think that's what makes this a really cool job, that you do get to meet so many founders with sometimes great and sometimes kind of weird and wonderful ideas that they're looking to take to market. There's a little bit more thorough due diligence than what you see on the shows, which ironically does happen on Dragon's Den. It just doesn't quite make it into the BBC cut. But yeah, it's somewhat similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the thing is, Dragon's Den is a TV entertainment show. So they've got to put all of that stuff in, haven't they? Richard, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that is quite incredible, isn't it? 100 shows. I don't know where that's gone. So that means I've been doing this a couple of years, which is crazy. This is crazy. Where does the time go? So we met on LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit about your journey on LinkedIn. Why do you use LinkedIn, Kiran?
Yeah, so I started probably only about 12 months back. I had one or two what I thought were semi-decent ideas, put a few posts out, got a little bit of traction, kind of spent 3 or 6 months just iterating, bit of test and learn. And then I think it was December last year, I started posting much more systematically. So a couple of comments each day and then one piece of content. I started off doing it each day, but I then moved to just weekdays. So I guess why do I do it? So in the industry where I work, there tends to be quite a lot of opportunities to invest, but the deals that you really want to invest into tend to be quite competitive. So founders might have 3 or 4 other people similar to me that they're talking to, and are all looking to put out terms to get involved in that particular deal. Terms tend to be quite similar across different funds. So 9 times out of 10, it comes down to who has someone built up the best relationship with, and who do they feel that they can work with. It's a relatively short process that, it might take us 8 to 12 weeks to make an investment. So actually, if someone knows you day one at the start of that, even if you've got the best relationship in the world, it's a relatively small window. Whereas I think with the LinkedIn side of it, you can share thoughts, opinions. Some people will agree with, some people will disagree with, but that's completely fine. I think that what that does is, when you get to that first meeting, you then typically, one, the other person will know you, and 2, they tend to be more aligned to, I guess, how I approach things compared to other people. So yeah, a lot of people use LinkedIn, I think, for deal origination, which, don't get me wrong, that's a great byproduct for it. But from my side, it's more around that kind of activation and feeling like you've built a relationship before you've sat in a room with someone.
Yeah. Some of the I don't really watch Dragon's Den an awful lot, and I'm trying to think of the diary of the CEO's name. It's just gone out of my head. What's he called?
Stephen Bartlett.
It's Stephen Bartlett. There's a lot of people come on there wanting Stephen Bartlett to be their mentor, don't they? And so you're like the Stephen Bartlett of the room, and then there's something, so I'm going, I've got this amazing idea, and a couple of venture investors have turned around and gone, oh, really? Yeah, I really want to invest in you. And so like, oh, okay. So I wonder if Stephen Bartlett's going to invest. And so they pitch it all around. Which one are you?
Good question. I've never thought about that, and it feels quite a challenge to compare myself to anybody that's got the track record that's made it to their heights. And I don't watch the show particularly often either. I guess it probably would be similar in terms of personality traits to someone like a Stephen. So I think his view, quite similar to mine, is honesty, transparency. I think there's a lot of people historically that have thought venture and finance in general, it's almost, don't reveal too much of what's behind the curtain, otherwise actually it'll lose some of the glamour that it has. I actually think it's the opposite. I think just being super transparent, telling people what we do, how we do it, is really the way to get more people interested in the industry.
Yeah, sure. Perfect. Richard's got a question, but we're going to come to that in a second, Richard. I just want to just get this LinkedIn out of the way first. Do you like LinkedIn, Kiran?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do like LinkedIn. I thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy it in some ways that I never thought I would use it for. So people think it's all about content out, but actually some of my thinking quickly gets refined as people challenge and push back with different opinions. I think if you've got an open-mindedness, LinkedIn's actually a really good learning tool. So I definitely like it from that angle. I think there are definitely some negatives that are associated with it as well. So I think if you are a slave to LinkedIn, it's really difficult. So I pretty much try and post every day. It's the top of my to-do list. Not always the first thing I do, but it's the top of the to-do list, as in I know at some point I'm going to post something through the day. But I now only do that Monday to Friday, and then selectively on a weekend, if I've not got a lot on, I will do it. Actually, if I'm out having a good time, then LinkedIn just takes a back seat for the day. So yeah, pros and cons, but definitely enjoy it in aggregate.
Good. And are you getting business from what you're doing on LinkedIn, Kiran?
Yeah, I do. So I get quite a lot of opportunities that come in. So Mercia is a UK focused investor, so I do get some stuff that falls outside of that. But then I probably get, I think it works out somewhere between 500 and 1,000 business plans or investment opportunities a year based on the current run rate. So get plenty of stuff from it. And we have done a deal that's come in through LinkedIn, so it definitely does help on that side. But yeah, for me, the biggest part of it is not about how many business plans you get. It's when you sit in a room and someone goes, I know you, and your mind's thinking back of, oh, where did I meet this person? And then actually 5 minutes into the conversation, the I know you comment is, I've seen your content and I know you that way. So yeah, I get business from it, but that's not the main driver for why I do it.
No. And that is brilliant that you've just said that, because people buy from people who they know, like, and trust, or they get investors who they know, like, and trust. And you're building all that up because of what you're doing on LinkedIn. How brilliant is that?
Yeah, it's good fun. I think ultimately, if you're going to go door to door and have 1,001 coffees to tell people something, it's quite hard yards, but you do get an immediate impact. Whereas I think with LinkedIn, it's the opposite way. You get complete tumbleweed for the first couple of months, but it's almost someone who's way further on their LinkedIn journey than me kind of analogized it as you've just got to keep going. That's the number one success factor. Just do it long enough that the compounding impact of it ratchets up.
Yeah. Like you're doing this today, someone might be watching this in 6 months' time. So, or listening to the podcast. So if you're listening to the podcast today, guys, it's the summer. It is the 11th of July. But this is going to be here forever, and someone might find it. What also happens is they start, they see something that you do, and they're sort of like, oh, I'm going to, and they start going down a little rabbit hole, finding out all about you. And they like this post, they like that post, see that you're on a podcast, go and listen to the podcast. And they're building up this picture. And when they say they know you, they actually know you. They've heard your words, they've heard you talking. You like you say, you speak with is that a Mancunian accent?
It should be. Manchester's always been home.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, it's just like me. He talks with a Mancunian accent. Oh, I wonder if he supports Reds or Blues or what have you. And I'm going to ask that question: red or blue?
Red. Yeah, unfortunately, in recent years.
Look, my surname is Leeds, so don't even talk about football in my presence. Okay, so finally, do you use any other social media, Kiran?
Not really, no. I've got a personal Instagram account, but I literally just use that as almost like a photo book. I don't kind of follow too many people. I use it for business. Don't do Facebook. I use Twitter for one sole purpose, which is you can see the goals in the 3 o'clock games quicker than you can when you're waiting for match of the day, but don't post or not active on that. So yeah, LinkedIn's really my kind of main social media platform.
Fantastic. And you're doing great things there, which is absolutely wonderful. So Richard's got a great question here. A great question. Let's see if I can just stop that a second and get Richard's question up. What is the biggest single investment that you've made, and did it pay off?
Yes, I'm not sure what the biggest is. That's a good question. Most of them tend to be in and around a similar value, just given where Mercia invests. And did it pay off is still a big question mark for most of the investments that I've made. So I've been at Mercia for 3 years now, and probably the typical exit for a venture-backed business is anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So I've got some that are definitely showing some green shoots where they've raised later stage capital at uplifts in valuation. So there's some that are on the right track, but did it pay off? For me, the kind of proof's always in the pudding, and you don't quite see that until ultimately that business exits. So yeah, if someone's watching this back in 3 to 5 years, maybe drop me a line and ask that one at that point.
Brilliant. I love that. And that's the thing, isn't it? You're investing in a business that's got a 5, 10, 15-year plan, and that's sitting on the fence for a while, isn't it?
Yeah, 5, 10, or 15-year plan is an interesting word pattern. So it's usually a 5 to 10 year horizon. The plan might go out for 2 years, 3 at the most, and ultimately it's a lot of test and learn and iteration, which for me kind of leads you back to you can do all the due diligence you want on the plan itself. Ultimately, this is about backing people. Someone that's got the right domain expertise, has got the right attributes, right characteristics to go on and grow that business, because the business that you invest in on day one is probably not the business that you sell in, like I say, 5 to 10 years time.
So I'm going to talk about Stephen Bartlett again. Sorry, but say he came to you, and he obviously he doesn't need to because he's fine. Yeah. But say he came to you and said, "Look, I've got this idea for a business." He'd be great because he's already run loads of successful businesses. So you'd back him and give him what he wants. Is that how the game plays?
Yeah, it's not quite that kind of basic of it's all about team, but ultimately, yeah, candidly, if you've got an exited founder that's been there, done that, and got the T-shirt before, it becomes a lot easier. That makes up quite a small percentage of the deals that we see and the deals that most venture investors will see, because ultimately, once you've got a decent exit behind you, you've got enough of the cash to fund it yourself and then keep 100% of the pie at the end of it. So it's kind of other characteristics that we look for as well. So, is it someone that's been in a particular market for a certain period of time? Is it someone that was maybe the second tier of a management team of a business that's exited, where it's not made him or her millions of pounds, but it's given them enough cash to go off, seed it again, and actually their experience is super relevant? Or it could be, something completely left field, but it's about trying to pick out I guess trying to pick out the outliers usually starts with having the right person and the right team that isn't quite as conventional as what you would probably see in all of their competitors.
Yeah, no, I get that. So the only way I can sort of like explain how you must feel is I'll speak to somebody that might become a client. And so that we come on, we have a little chat, and they go away and I go, oh, I'm going to think about it. And I say, oh, that'd be great. It'd be and I'm sort of like feeling excited and hope that they're going to be a client. Do you have those moments when you speak to someone that's come in with this, what they think is a great idea or not a brilliant idea or what have you? You're sort of like, oh my goodness, that is amazing. I've just found the new iPhone or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so it's a weird emotion, in fact, the kind of day to day in the role, because your job is to be very pessimistic. You start every call with, what, for every 100 businesses that I see a business plan for, we probably only invest into maybe 2 of them. So you do have to be really kind of disciplined of not getting overexcited. But then you do get to that tipping point where you go, at the start of this conversation, I didn't like this. I didn't like the business, because we don't like any business at the start of a conversation. And I've asked the 30 questions, which I thought they wasn't going to have an answer to, and they've had the perfect answer to all of them. This is a business that we want to be involved in. So yeah, the excitement curve builds relatively steadily. But yeah, it's good fun when you get to it.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I'm not sure whether you're allowed to give specifics, but what's the weirdest thing that someone sort of like said to you? Can you invest in this? And you thought, go back to Cloud Cuckoo Land, please.
Yeah, there's quite a few. It's probably not appropriate for me to share kind of direct examples.
No, that's fair enough.
But I think there's a few themes. So you have some businesses where you see them and you think there's just no use case for this product. It's great, it's cool. If it's a consumer facing business, I'll probably love to play with it for a couple of hours. But actually, are you going to get the masses to part with some cold hard cash? Probably not. So yeah, there's a few that comes to mind, but I wouldn't want to call anybody out in this forum directly.
That's fair enough. I wonder if Mr. Rubik had the same issue when he went to get some venture capitalists, when he was trying to peddle that cube thing around that he did.
Yeah, there's a quote somewhere. I think it's when you're not sure about what you're doing, just remember there's a millionaire walking around that invented the pool noodle, which is the kind of inflatable cylinder as we see it in the UK. And that is quite a refreshing thing to keep at the back of your mind, that as crazy as something is, there is sometimes a use case for everything. And I think that's an interesting dynamic in the industry, because 9 times out of 10, people won't all necessarily agree with a particular investment or a particular business, because the ones that go on to be the real successful outliers, they tend to be the ones that divided opinion at the start. So yeah, you got to keep a lot of, I think, modesty in this role. You see a lot of businesses that fail. You see a lot of ideas that you think, I'm not too sure about, but sometimes they come around in other shapes and forms.
So I come to you, I've got this idea. Do you just turn around and go, yeah, here you go, here's the money, or do you have to go to a committee? What's the sort of process? What actually happens?
Yeah, so we tend to get involved when it's a little bit more mature than just an idea. We don't do like the really, really early stage stuff. So typically there'll always already be a business incorporated. It will more often than not be post-product. So they've got something that customers can see and touch and feel, whether that be a physical product or in software businesses, obviously, more of a kind of front end to whatever that product will be. So then, it's a little bit further advanced. Sometimes they will also have revenue, so not always, depending on the sector. But some businesses will have some customers already using and paying for the platform. And then, our process is we discuss it as a team. So we're pretty collaborative, and we take the view that actually, if I use my experience on my own, that's one viewpoint. But actually, if we get 15 of us together that sits within the wider team that I work in, not a lot of things are new. So someone's probably seen something similar before and may know someone within that industry that can help formulate a more robust view. So we do that quite quickly. Then we present it to our investment committee, which is some of the senior team within the business that have got many more years experience than I have, that really kind of give it a good kicking of the tires and ensure that everything's consistent with the type of deals that we're looking for. So we tend to do that. And then there's a really short due diligence phase. Ultimately, there's not a lot you can due diligence on an early stage business. So we might get into a bit more detail in terms of the financials. We'll typically ask to speak to a couple of end customers. So we're not just taking what management tells us on face value, and maybe 2 or 3 other streams depending on the business itself. And then, we sweep up with a final paper to our investment committee. We have obviously legal documents that we've got to enter into, and then ultimately a deal should close. So from first conversation to cash in the bank, it's very much how long's a piece of string, but on average, kind of most of the deals that I work on tend to be sort of 8 to 12 weeks from first meeting to a deal being done.
Oh, fantastic. When are you going to write a book? You must have some great stories.
I think there's a lot of people that have got many better stories than I have, so I don't think there's a book coming anytime soon. I struggle most days to get my 3 or 4 paragraphs out on LinkedIn, so I can't imagine the writer's block of trying to write a book. But yeah, maybe when I've got another 30, 40 years experience, that might be the next job on the list.
And how did you get into it, Kiran? Because it's quite a weird job, isn't it?
Yeah, purely by chance. So I come out of uni, looked for a few graduate schemes, ended up working for Lloyds Bank on their grad scheme, did that for a while, wasn't really keen with being that kind of small cog in a big wheel. And then at the time, Lloyds was setting up a real estate fund, which was about 15 people. So I was like, oh, that sounds quite interesting. I'll go and do that. Really enjoyed that, had a blast. I love working in quite small organizations because your day is just so varied. So I did that for a while. And then my old boss from there joined Mercia. And then during the kind of COVID period, I was like, yeah, really enjoy my job. This is the bits I like about it. But the bit that wasn't too interesting is actually, for me, one property deal looks the same as the next 20. So actually, when the opportunity come across to jump into startup world, I did that. So yeah, pure chance and a good network, and thankfully did a good job for my boss that then recommended me to jump across.
No, fantastic. And so, it's every single property deal. So what's typically your area now then? You say startups, but is that, because there's software, there's products, there's food and drink?
Yeah, so Mercia's sector agnostic. So as a kind of house, we'll look at an array of different things. Majority of businesses that get venture funding tend to be either technology or life sciences businesses, because ultimately they are the ones that will scale and generate the returns that you need to make the kind of portfolio averages work. I'm really fortunate that the guy that sits in the same team as me up in Manchester has got a life sciences background, and I know very little, stroke nothing about that space. So thankfully, most of that stuff goes to Rob. And then I'll pick up most of our software deals. That's where majority of my portfolio is. So I've seen a lot of things that go right and go wrong over the last 3 years. So that stuff comes to me. And then the hardware businesses, we tend to split 50-50 depending on capacity. So yeah, every day is different. It's not like we invest into one really particular niche, which for me is quite a cool part of the role. You're always learning.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So what are the biggest mistakes that people make when they come to ask for venture capital?
Yeah, so I think I always try and draw a parallel between, if a business should be able to attract venture cash, then it should be a good and scalable business anyway. So I think most of the feedback on why someone wouldn't be able to raise cash, unless it's because it's a lifestyle business, which doesn't fit for the venture model, more often than not, it's actually a question of, fundamentally, is this a business that we think is one of the top 2% of businesses that we see? So the first bit is just having a really clear value proposition, especially in this market. Customers, most of the investments that I'm involved in, the customer of the portfolio company that we back will usually be another corporate. We do much more B2B than B2C stuff, albeit look at both. So for me, it's almost, how do you have a very strong value proposition where a customer says, yeah, I get it, I understand it, I need to buy that solution. That's where most of the things that we don't progress tend to fall down, where it might be a bit nice to have, it might be a little bit iteratively better than others, but it's not that kind of core, you have to buy this product because either it will generate you X more revenue or it will take out Y costs. Ultimately, I take the view of most corporates want to make more money and retain as much of it as possible. So yeah, that's definitely the biggest one.
Oh, fantastic. And what do you wish you'd have found and invested in?
Any of the big businesses that have gone on to exit, right? Your Instagrams, WhatsApps, Facebook, etc., etc. So yeah, I think ultimately this game is quite a long feedback loop. So there are some businesses that I've seen in previous years that for whatever reason we haven't ended up investing in, and some have gone on to do well, and others have gone on to do less well. So everybody's got those 2 or 3 deals where you think, actually, I really wish that I got into that. They're not the household names of today yet. But yeah, there's quite a few that you miss out on. And for me, it all goes back to team. I don't really sit there and say, I've really missed out on this business. I wish we could have invested into X. But what you do sometimes sit back and say, I wonder where that founder's up to. He or she had such drive, such ambitions, such great knowledge of the business that there's no way they haven't made it work. And then usually you check in and actually they've raised another round at a big uplift, or they've gone on to something successful. So it does happen. And there's no one in this game, I think, that doesn't have a few of them.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I could talk to you for all day and just fire loads of questions at you, but we've pretty much run out of time. I've got one more question for you. Before I go there, I'm just going to go into I don't know. Now I've remembered I haven't uploaded it. I've got someone coming in next week. I've got James Townsend coming in next week, and he's going to come and talk to us about videos. So he's I don't know if you're not allowed to say whether you've met him or not. Anyway, but anyway, he's doing amazing things with video and AI and all that sort of malarkey. So he's coming in next week. So we'll be chatting to him next week. So this week, thank you very much for being my guest. My last question that I always ask everybody is, what tip would you give your 16-year-old self, Kiran?
I don't think I'd give myself any tips at 16, because at 16 I definitely thought I had all the right answers, and I didn't listen to anybody. I think I was probably 23, 24, 25 before I actually recognized the value of taking on some advice. So I guess if I was going to give my 23-year-old self some advice on what to do, it would definitely be just always ask why. I think in this in the space that I work in, there is no place for just doing things the same way as we did it last year and the year before. So really just challenging conventional wisdom. I think the first step of that is doing that with other people. And then I think the second step is actually doing that with yourself. Why am I doing this? What's the motivation? Where do I want to get to? So yeah, that would have been the question, but I'd have definitely waited a few years past 16. Otherwise, I'd have took none of it on board.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. It makes an awful lot of sense as well. Kiran, thank you so much for being on my show today. And if you're listening to this in 20 years' time, it'd be interesting to see where you are and what you're doing. But thank you very much, Kiran.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on. Cheers, Ashley.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
You get out what you put in.